Spring practice gets underway on Tuesday as Eastern Michigan returns to the football field, joined alongside head coach Chris Creighton. Does it feel like it's the seventh time that you've taken to the field with this team?
Gosh, in some ways it feels as though just getting started. And then when you say 7 years, I mean, and looking back, it has been a while. So I think we're hopefully getting better and better at it.
When you look at kind of the longest tenured FBS head coaches, you're now 25th in the current active head coaches list. It just shows the profession changes a lot, but also shows the stability you've been able to bring to this team and the university over the last 7 years.
Yeah, it's been good. It really has. It feels though that, not new here anymore. Feels though that our program is becoming more and more established, and again, hopefully we're getting better and better as we go.
We're not going to spend too much time talking about last year, but when you look back at what it was, third bowl game in the last 4 years, having an opportunity to beat a Big Ten team for the third straight year, what kind of stands out the most to you about last year's team?
Well, we had some breakthroughs, but probably not as many as we would have liked. We beat some teams. We've beaten every team in the Mid-America Conference now, but fell short of our goals. Had some big wins, obviously, with beating a third Big Ten team, in the third straight year. We had a chance for a magical night, against Pitt in the Quick Lane Bowl and fell short. So, love our team. I thought we fought like crazy. But we did also, fall short in some areas, and so that's definitely made us hungry, to try to make that better this year.
So many four-year players and starters from the team a year ago. You look at guys, Vince Calhoun, Brody Hoying, Kevin McGill, Shaq Van, guys that were four-year guys, and now those guys are gone. It's the first time a lot of Eastern Michigan fans will remember the program without them. How do you go about trying to replace some of the productivity they had?
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of, college sports and college football is that, you want guys to graduate and to move on with their life when their time is up. And so, we've been recruiting and we've been developing players. At the same time, you start listing off some of those names and, replace is really not the right word. I mean, guys have to make their own name. Guys have to step up and be their best. We'll have our pro day here soon and get to see all those guys coming back. And, it was a great group. There's no question. But we do feel as though, we've recruited well and that we've developed guys. And so this will be a big spring.
Heading into the spring, what do you kind of view as your biggest strengths coming back? And also kind of what's the biggest area that you kind of really want to work on heading into the spring?
Well, I mean, there's lots of ways, to answer that. When you lose a big senior class, I mean, our senior leadership, has to step up just like everything else. But I'm really excited about this group, and we're headed in a really good direction right now. We've lost, 3 key secondary players, defensively, but feel really good about the core of people that we have coming back on defense. I really believe that we can take a step forward defensively. And then, offensive skill-wise, we've lost, a lot of offensive skill. And like you mentioned, a lot of production. And so that always starts at the quarterback position. And so we're going to have to make sure that we're playing great at that position. And then, there'll be some new faces at receiver and running back and, feel pretty good about our offensive line and our tight ends. And then in terms of the special teams, our 2 starting specialists are both back and think that both of those guys have a chance to be, really, really, really good. And then Drake Sutton, our long snapper, again, for, the less people think about him, the better. And he would be the first to tell you that. And, his name was not called because he didn't make mistakes. And so we'll need to step up there as well.
Everybody wants to talk about the quarterback role. You've had Mike Glass for the better part of 2 years. He and Tyler Wiegers shared the responsibility 2 years ago. Last year, of course, he gets the starting nod, but did miss the game. Preston Hutchinson starts, had some good reps, but it's still a quarterback room that's going to be pretty green. How do you go about getting them enough preparation this spring to be ready for the fall?
Well, you're limited to 15, practice opportunities, and we'll be taking full advantage of all of those. Preston played some of the Buffalo game, but it was, start to finish in the Western Michigan game, and always had a great night. I mean, has given himself and all of us a ton of confidence. But then he'll also be leading and competing at the same time, just like Mike was last year. So we have guys who have developed in the program, and then we had a graduate transfer come in as well in January. So excited to see that develop.
Running back wise, of course, Shaq was with the program for 6 years, but it was a running back that played a complementary role because you wanted to throw so much. How do you kind of envision 2020 being? Do you still maybe rely on the running back a little bit more than you did in 2019?
Well, honestly, and this isn't necessarily game to game, but by the end of next season, we need to be 50-50. And we need to be able to run the ball and throw the ball with equal proficiency. There's no question about it. We do not want to be a one-dimensional team, and each team is going to have strengths and weaknesses, and you want to accentuate those. But we want to be able to run and throw the ball with equal proficiency. So we've got some good backs coming back, and have one of our freshmen got here early, has been here since January, and then another one coming in, in June. But it's going to be an exciting spring to see those guys go.
Kobe Baltram at the linebacker position last year, team best 128 tackles. He graduates. How do you go about filling a role for his productivity as well in that middle?
Terry will have to continue to step up. Will be a senior, of our two inside linebackers. And then, Kobe did have an outstanding year. And from the moment he got on campus, just was, so serious about being his best and learning it and doing it right, and quickly a year later, became a leader in our program. And so all of those guys will be missed. But we've got a group of guys that, Coach Nethery's been bringing along, and, they're chomping at the bit to get out there this spring to show what they can do. And, I've coached with Coach Nethery since 1997, and I really don't have, concerns about him bringing linebackers along.
You still bring back a fair amount defensively. What kind of it stands out to the most of you that excites you about this defensive crew that returns?
Yeah, it always starts up front. And so when you look at our defensive line, we had some guys graduate, but we also had two on our defensive line that we thought were going to graduate, but just because of injuries and whatnot are able to come back. And so and you talk about the front line, when you talk about the interior of the D-line, starts there, and we've got a chance to be pretty good, from the inside out. And where we lacked a little twitch, and maybe our pass rush game last year, we feel as though there's a couple guys who didn't play much or at all last year that'll throw their hat in the ring with Turan on the outside, that I think we're going to have even more productivity on the outside. So starting there with the D-line, and then half of our linebackers are back. Told you we've lost, two of our three safeties and then one of our two corners. But again, we really haven't had to rely on outside help in those positions. There are guys in the program that we feel are ready to step up and are going to need to.
On special teams, I know you touched on Drake's graduation, but you do, as you mentioned, return Chad and Jake Julian. Jake led Eastern in punting last year, setting a career and program best mark for that. What do you see his biggest strength coming into his senior year being?
Gosh, from January now to early March, he's been phenomenal. His leadership, his effort in winter conditioning, I just think his ownership in the program, his confidence, it just seems like it was a snap of the fingers. We were recruiting him the summer before we started, a few years ago, and he started as a freshman, and here he is going into his senior year. He's got the ability to be, the best in the league. So we're excited about that whole unit and group taking it as far as it can go. And then, Chad Ryland, I'll tell you, if you look at our specialists in the pit game, hard to be much better. Those two guys together with, everybody else out there on those units, was really superb. And, he's becoming an upperclassman now in our program and has had some incredibly great moments. And so we've got really high expectations for him.
You got to make a couple adjustments on your staff with some guys departing. You bring Coach Blaney, Coach Piatkowski, and Coach Hicks in. What has it been like to have those guys in the room so far working with?
It's really been a smooth transition, and, we haven't been out coaching yet, but, from the outset, it's always been trying to hire great people and recruit great people and people immediately think about the position that they need to coach and whatnot. But, you great people who care about the people that they're working with and care about the guys that they're coaching. And then obviously we want experts at what they do. And it's been a very smooth transition. Obviously missed the guys that have moved on. And at the same time, there's, some new excitement and new ideas. And I think we got a great group.
Before we get you out of here, you mentioned Pro Day. Some guys that are at the pro level have had an exciting offseason. You look at Andrew Wiley winning a Super Bowl title. You look at Max Crosby finished as the runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. What does it say about this program's ability to develop guys that may have been overlooked and send them to the next level and become pretty darn successful?
Well, I think Eastern Michigan's got a history of that. When you start looking at the numbers of guys who've gone to the NFL or to the other professional leagues from Eastern Michigan, it's a pretty long list. I don't know that we're doing anything differently other than trying to recruit great people who are talented, fit this place, fit who we are. But it is fun. You mentioned 3 bowl games in 4 years and 3-0 versus the Big Ten in 3 years. And when I'm talking to recruits, we say we just had an offensive lineman win the Super Bowl and just had a defensive end who just got drafted last year, was, up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And, we're in this beautiful building and our guys are still killing it in the classroom. There are a lot of positives. At the same time, we just don't feel as though we've achieved what we've wanted to achieve, and we're just, where are we in that process? We have a long way to go. And so you've got another, the 2020 team, staff team program is hungry, driven to get better and to prove ourselves yet again.
Coach, I know you've said it a couple times that championships are won in the winter and spring. Spring is really an important time for people to make that growth and jump, isn't it?
Well, let's go back to the winter just real quick. Our seniors set a goal of setting 372 personal records, in our testing phase at the end of the winter. And that's an average of 4 a guy. We set 440 personal records. So hard to argue that could have gone, much better. And so now, next Tuesday we'll start spring. We call them opportunities instead of practices. Yes, we're practicing, but it's an opportunity to practice, to get better, to develop as an individual, as a group, and as a team and program. And the maturity of our guys, I really do think that we have the ability to look at it that way and to attack it that way, and when and if we do, I think April 13th, that Monday after the spring season, we'll look back and feel as though we've, progressed.
Already here upon a spring practice getting underway this week. Spring game concludes the annual spring campaign on April 11th. Coach, can't thank you enough for your time. As always, we'll catch up during the opportunities as well after practice. Until for Coach, I'm Greg Steiner saying thanks for tuning in to EMUEagles.com.